Hey everyone, this is writing micro lesson number 3 on properly citing sources for Honors 111 in the Civilization sequence of the Honors College at the University of Maine. And I'm the instructor, Rob Glover. So today we're going to talk about citations. First off, what are citations? Well, citations clarify the lineage of ideas. And by that, we mean citations establish where ideas are drawn from. Claims, facts, anything that we incorporate into a piece of writing, we're going to establish where we got that idea if it's not our own original idea. So when you hear references to citations, that's really all we're talking about. And a citation style, when a professor says they want you to use a particular citation style, is really just a systematized way of communicating that information to your reader. So on the right-hand side here, you see an in-text citation from a piece of writing, and then you see an end-of-text bibliography that the reader would go to in order to find that piece of information if they wanted to track down the original source. So why do we cite? Well, the answer you might often hear is because plagiarism is something really bad and you don't want to do it. And that is true. Plagiarism is bad. You don't want to misrepresent ideas that are not your own as your own. But I think that explanation kind of misses the point, right? That's a prohibition. It's something that you shouldn't do. But why do we do it? What is the purpose? What is the value? And so for that, I think there's really 3 reasons. A citation establishes the source of an idea. So we can make it clear what ideas are our own and what ideas are not our own. And we can actually identify where that idea comes from, right? Citations also bolster our arguments and claims. So if you're incorporating evidence, you're citing statistics or facts, or you're using textual evidence, the veracity of those ideas, how robust they are to your reader, is going to depend on where they come from. And if you don't cite sources, your reader is not going to know. And in the absence of that information, they might assume that those claims or those arguments are unreliable because the evidence that you're using is insufficient or at least not properly documented. And the real value of citing sources, I think, for academic work is that we leave a trail of breadcrumbs for others that are engaged in similar intellectual inquiry. So you may be researching a topic and you find that someone has written about it and they have a really good literature review, or they write a really good essay in which they're documenting the sources from which they're drawing information. And that's incredibly helpful for you because you want to go and track down those other resources. So it can be enormously helpful in the larger intellectual enterprise to figure out where the relevant information about a topic or a text or an idea, a scientific question, an area of inquiry is located. And citations help us do that. So yes, at its core, you don't want to engage in something fraudulent. You don't want to misrepresent work, but you also want to establish where your ideas are coming from. That's going to make your writing stronger, and you're doing a service to others that are engaged in similar inquiry by providing them some sort of trail back to the information that you're utilizing. So when do we cite? Well, basically you're going to cite anytime you're using a direct quotation from another work. That's absolute, right? If you're citing a extended quote from a book, you want a citation there. If you are drawing in information that is verbatim from another source, there should be a citation. So that's the first and arguably the clearest instance in which you'd be citing. But you also want to cite when you're presenting an idea or a claim or a fact or a statistic that is either A, not your original idea, so you didn't come up with it, and B, not common knowledge. So, you don't need to cite the fact that the Earth is the 3rd planet from the sun. That's common knowledge. Everyone knows that. You don't have to refer us to the source in which that's specifically articulated. But if you are presenting some information about the Earth's temperature as it's changed over time, that's drawn from a scientific document, even if it's not a direct quotation, even if it's not something verbatim from another text, that should definitely be cited. That is an instance in which you would engage in citation. So how do we cite? Well, that's where that citation style comes back in, right? So you want to find a citation style and follow it closely. And here, a good piece of advice, if you have a major, an area in which you're studying, talk to your professors and say, what is the citation style that's typically used in sociology or English or engineering, right? And see what they say. And in most cases, in your area, there's going to be a citation style that typically is what's used, or maybe there's a couple of them. But it pays off for you as you move along with your writing to figure out how that citation style works and become familiar with it. Because as you go on in college, you're going to have to write more and more. And in particular, you're going to have to write in your discipline. And so to get a working knowledge and a handle on how the preferred citation style within your area of study works is going to help you. You also want to ensure that you're using both in-text citations and bibliographic citations as your citation style dictates. So the in-text citation oftentimes is a parenthetical citation. It'll be enclosed within a parentheses, and it might just be author name and a page number. That information is insufficient to get your reader back to the original source. At some point, you need to provide the bibliographic information, and usually that occurs in a bibliography. It's a collection of sources and their information at the end of a text. And your citation style is going to provide guidance for both of those things. How do you do those? What is the proper way to cite something in text, and what is the proper way to provide that information to your reader? Occasionally, there'll be a citation style that uses footnotes or endnotes, and those are good too. But in many cases, it's a parenthetical citation and then a bibliography. Now, if you're using an unconventional source, right? So it's not a text, it's not a book. It might be a movie, something you found on a web page, an interview that you conducted in person. Now, you might look at that and say, well, that's a weird source that we don't typically use, and I don't know how to cite it, and I'm not sure there is a proper way to cite it. That's probably not true. In general, for most of the major citation styles, you can find all sorts of different types of sources and how you would cite them in that style. So again, as part of being socialized into the norms of academic writing, you want to find a good source that provides information about that citation style, and you want to find out what is the proper way to cite it. Don't improvise. Don't just wing it and try to create your own citation format for that. All right, so one more caveat. Increasingly, I am seeing lots of students utilizing citation generators, or there's some programs that I think are really great. I use some of these too, like RefWorks or Zotero, and those are a good start, right? So you can, sometimes it will scoop up the information from somewhere online. Sometimes if you go to Google Books, there's a plugin and you can just click on something and it immediately picks up all of that citation information and puts it into a database if you're dealing with something like Zotero. Those things are good, but they're a good start. And I can usually spot the citation generators and stuff like that. If I'm looking at a list of citations that are just using those and they're not trying to clean them up or double checking them, they usually look kind of strange. And there might be a bunch of missing information. So I might get a citation that's just, a year and a title, but it doesn't tell me who the author is. It doesn't tell me what publisher it is. It doesn't tell me where it was published. All the other information that according to that citation style would need to be there. So absolutely use them. Feel free to use them. And in particular, programs like Zotero are going to be a godsend when you start working on your thesis or longer pieces of writing in which you're citing and trying to keep track of lots of different pieces of information. So absolutely learn how to use those programs, but just be prepared to clean up and edit the citations they produce because they're not perfect. So utilizing citations effectively. First, you want to choose a citation style and follow it very, very closely, right? Citation styles exist for a reason. They're not really meant to be improvised with. You're not really meant to kind of go and do your own thing. It's formulaic, and it's formulaic for a reason so that there's consistency and we know exactly what source you're using and somebody else can find it. You also want to ensure that your citation enables the reader to track down the original source. So if you look at your bibliography and you see a source that if it was presented to the reader, they wouldn't be able to figure out what it was and where to find it, then that's probably insufficient. You need to try to find some more information. And when you incorporate direct quotes in particular, you want to utilize transitional language that softens the disruption in what we call voice that always happens when you're using citations. So this is especially the case with quotations, but this could be the case with plenty of other things as well. In particular, you want to avoid what we call hit and run quotes. So sometimes in the middle of a paper, there'll just be a full sentence that's a quotation from some other source. There's no language to introduce it. It's not, the reader isn't kind of prepared for it. And anytime you're incorporating a quotation from another source, it's another writer who's utilizing a different voice and phrasing things in a different way. It can be really jarring, particularly with some of the texts that we deal with in honors that might be, hundreds of years old. It's going to read very differently. And for it to just land in the middle of a paragraph or the middle of a paper kind of shocks your reader. So you want to use transitional language, and it creates a flow that makes it easier for your reader to read. So, for instance, as Glover 2009 argues, quote, citations are extremely important. That's a direct quote, but I've integrated it with a parenthetical citation and some language of my own, so it doesn't just kind of smack the reader in the face in the middle of my writing, right? So be mindful of that, and these are the criteria I'm going to be looking at as I assess your ability to use citations this week in your weekly writing assignments. Plenty of helpful resources here. So the Purdue Online Writing Lab has lots of information about citing sources and using citation styles, so these systems of citation. In particular, MLA and APA. There's a lot of good information on the Purdue Online Writing Lab. And the UMaine library also has a citation guide. It's one of their library guides, and it's going to link you to lots of different sources and even some handbooks on specific citation styles. So feel free to use those things as well. And also, I did mention earlier things like RefWorks or Zotero, which is a free program that you can download. And particularly if you're writing longer papers, those things are going to be helpful. But as I said, just remember that caveat that these citation generators or some of these websites that will produce a citation for you, you just want to be really careful that you double check them, because they're imperfect, and some of the citations that they produce are imperfect. So that's going to wrap it up for this micro lesson on properly citing sources, and this is going to be the skill that you'll be putting to work in your writing assignments this week. So I look forward to reading your assignments for this week. Thanks very much.